one of the most iconic and enduring fighters in video game history. It went toe-to-toe with the best in the business, with Streetfighter in arcades and homes managing to carve a unique identity that stood out from its peers. Fueled by 80s and 90s action films, a violent, fast-paced and visually compelling game was thrust upon us and quickly fell into pop culture. The first Mortal Kombat film was one of the better video game to movie transfers that cropped up in the 90s. Sure, you could say the best of a bad bunch, but it remained true to the legacy, formula and style of the game, and this secured it a warmer welcome from most of us fans. Now we're back in the fight. Are you ready for more? Back then, the combat was simple compared to the likes of Street Fighter. Most characters played the same with high-low punch and kicks, similar special moves both in play and control. The hook was a simple one. Beat the other person across 2 rounds and then receive gratification by executing them in style with a fatality finisher. Or rapidly smash the buttons and fail and then get angry. No, what many forget is this was born in a time where arcades were the top level of graphical development. The marketing was then all about arcade perfect ports and trying to bring that into the home. Mortal Kombat was a leader in this area when it landed in 1991, and the hook used to come from word of mouth and eyeball attraction. And they were as much a spectator sport as Twitch et al. Are now. Popping into an arcade like I used to in my old city and town centres was always a case of walking the aisles to look for new games. Anything that stood out from the crowd would likely secure some coin action. Mortal Kombat was such a title that did both from a graphic perspective, ease of play, and of course a spectator sport. Good players could see a crowd form around them, and actually being the one watched added even more pressure for you to show off your skills and of course pull off those fatalities. Now the niche it filled grew, and although it was never as deep or as complex as Street Fighter, Virtua Fighter or Samurai Showdown and Crew at the time, it never really needed to be. And this is no longer true. Specific frame timing, complex stringer combos, blocks, counters, special moves, babalities, brutalities, friendships, x-rays. The game has grown very complex with a huge gallery of fighters to draw from that feel, look and play uniquely to offer a firm favourite for all. Arguably, the series is in the best shape of all the fighters now, with a strong following, huge esport market, and in terms of graphics, it's still as pioneering as it ever was. Mortal Kombat 11 is merely weeks away from launch, but already we can see this is the best looking 1v1 fighter to hit the series and market as a whole. The premise is the same, but the changes are stark in many areas, even the last release in X, which this is a dramatic leap up from. Now, like all NetherRealm titles, this is an Unreal Engine 3 game. Fear not though, as this is heavily modified and a bespoke version that the team have crafted as their own. Refined, augmented and bolstered to play well with all the latest tricks such as PBR based shading, volumetric light volumes, dismemberment, TAA, real-time seamless cinematic to gameplay and much more. Before I get into that though, and the huge improvements from Mortal Kombat X, I'm sure you may be interested in just how the 4 console versions draw the game and run. So let's start with pixel power. The lightweight in the ring is the base Xbox, coming in with a seemingly static 1600 by 900 resolution in both battle and real-time cutscenes. The game runs a temporal AA solution that looks to accumulate frame data to improve further frames output. The targets here seem to be 1080p, which can have some sections with low movement count out at this or near level. But I'm inclined to believe the depth buffer is 900p and the sacrifices come from reductions in per object motion blur, sample rate, shading reduction, shadow filtering and resolution, GPO particles and general shading overall optimizations, which keeps the same performance targets as the rest. Now next up is the PS4, which comes out with a 1920 by 1080p resolution that matches all previous releases from the teams on this hardware. Similar cutbacks from the premium consoles exist here, such as shaders and post-processing effects, but they are better than the base Xbox in many areas to a small degree that helps raise the sharpness and detail in play over the 2 consoles. Again, the same target performance is met on this machine.
I will not taste it, revenant blood.
Face me.
and find out.
Splendid idea.
Round 1. Fight!
Now moving into the heavyweight division, we see the PlayStation take runner-up slot here with a dynamic or split rendering resolutions across gameplay and cinematics. The target here is the same as base, with 60 FPS in gameplay dropping to 30 Hz during those gruesome but visually splendid special moves. The higher frame rate obviously gives us the lowest pixel count of 2240 by 1260, which appears to be fixed, or certainly the most common output count I can see during battles both on and offline. This again uses a TAA to increase the quality, using motion vectors, accumulation buffers and such to target the output we see natively in the real-time section, being 2880 by 1620. Now this means we are seeing a range of 36 to 125% increase in fill rate. The bandwidth limitation here is likely keeping the gameplay action lower than expected. As I covered with the Pro's launch, the memory subsystem was not improved in line with the GPU and the CPU increases, which forces bottlenecks into other areas than the base model. I did catch a couple of points of 3200 by 1800, and this may be the ceiling of the target frame output buffer for the TAA accumulations, but I don't think it ever raises anywhere above 2880 by 1620 as a native output. I believe that increase comes from the TAA. Leaving the heavyweight champion of them all as the X, which offers the cleanest, sharpest output of the lot, both in gameplay and cinematics, which again adapts or scales between the two. The above bandwidth issue helps the X here to the biggest gap during gameplay. That 3200 by 1800 is over 2 times the Pro. The lower 33 millisecond sections dropping this down to a 77% increase at a native 3840 by 2160. The TAA attempts to create this ceiling at all times, but only during these 30 Hz sections do we see a lot or close to native 4K. The results are close between the two premium consoles, with the X being cleaner overall than the others, but on a 4K screen both of these machines will leave you very impressed, as does the base Xbox to be fair, even on a 1080p one. The premium machines do also enhance elements over base. Per object motion blur is certainly much better, being higher sampled, less dithered and cleaner than the other two, as are shading passes, GPU particles, shadow resolution and texture clarity. The X can look sharper, but I think this is down to the resolution than any changes in assets quality. The cinematic moments allow you to appreciate the increase the best, and they do look so damn good. Moving into performance then, we see the same target as X and Injustice 2, with a locked 60 in battle, dropping to 30 when the cinematics kick in. These sections change the quality of model shading by adding more light sources to enhance the skin tones, better subsurface scattering, specular highlights, depth of field and alpha are all ramped up here to show their best sides. Or is that the worst? The flow between these is seamless with a drop to half fresh, but still delivering a clean and gorgeous view that impresses you as you get stuck in, literally, to the action. The fact per object motion blur is left on here makes these all the smoother and less noticeable than they were in Mortal Kombat X, which dropped the per object motion blur during these sections. You can get some mild tearing on X and maybe the others during these segments, which we also saw in my Injustice 2 analysis, but these are very mild and highly infrequent, with all versions being so close to a locked 60 and 30 to be of no concern. Now, online battles can of course be affected more, but aside some heavy lag sessions that did cause me a few issues on a couple of occasions, as you can see here, most games play as well as local as online. With peer-to-peer info popping up before you start, you can quite literally pick your battles. Now, in terms of performance, this is simply superb across all versions. I doubt you will see any worse than my test here, which is 99.9% locked at the target. Now, due to the split, I have disabled my average rate here, as it will artificially skew the result. Just be confident that this is not a bad performing title at all. Now, the final piece here is input latency, which is another excellent showing, and these results are based from local AI play, so online will of course alter depending on the connection. All 4 versions target the same input times, as this would make cross-play harder if frame times were changed across the versions. So this means we see a low of 67.9 milliseconds and a high of 80.4 from the engine. You would of course need to factor in your TV here, but the average is 74 milliseconds across platforms, which is excellent for a fighting game, as low latency is key to learning the moves and timing during play. backing up the other stats as a simply marvellous and all-round pristine package that keeps the balance of speed, input performance and visuals perfectly aligned, and the results are head and shoulders above other fighting titles.
Fight!
Gameplay is as expected, with the final game having a huge single player story, extra elements, online tournaments and tower battles among much more, I'm sure. Here we can test the tower battles and it gives us a small taste of the characters, the visuals and upgrades we are seeing. Coming from Injustice 2, the shift to a more robust and accurate PBR material model is evident. Those early arenas show similarities to the ones from the DC Battler. Directional and aerial lights are often used, focusing ends of the arena in battle. Incidental detail is swamped in the backdrops. From a bottle-swigging Kano to a hungry eagle, you can sometimes be distracted by the vistas. Adding to this is the interaction that can enable R1 to chainsaw your enemy, skewer them like a kebab, or just exfoliate with the very best of them. These head-stomping elements all add to the dramatic, dynamic nature of play, and it makes this one, if not the best fighting game to spectate, due to its excessive and flamboyant nature. I absolutely love that this has stayed true throughout the series, as it is one of the few games I can actually watch someone else play and enjoy, as it really looks incredible. The increase over Injustice 2 stems largely from artistic changes, improvements to material shading, and maybe some enhancements to particles and alpha effects, which all look excellent at all times. The biggest leap here though is from Mortal Kombat X. Covered this way back at launch and I was a big fan of the visual style, effects works, gory fatalities and X-ray moves. But this is simply a complete overhaul from that game. Even though they share the same engine, it means little, and it is a perfect example of how focusing on the engine alone misses the largest ingredient. The tools are only as good as the hands that wield them. Now technically much has improved from that game. Online play was completely overhauled to rollback networking, and materials are far more accurate and diverse. Lighting has improved, as have volumetrics, TAA, geometry count and animation. But the biggest reason we are seeing such a stark leap here is from artistic skill, style and delivery. I would be amazed to learn the fight moves were not motion captured, something that originally helped pioneer back in the day with its digitized actors used to craft the sprite frames of animation. But the fluid flow of combat here is gorgeous to watch and control. Scorpion's chain that he wields like a 9-section whip exemplifies this perfectly as you flow into and out of this in action. But the seamless blending of frames, states and general motion fluidity is, well, this balance of form and function is always a tough one in games, and fighting games are one of the hardest. Some lurches from motion do occur of course, but mostly these are from impact strikes mid-move that stop a sequence. The sheer wealth of moves, grabs and locks that happen from a few button strikes always leave a smile on your face, as they look so good and natural most of the time. This is ramped up as you move into the Fatal Blow, which replaces the X-ray moves from 10. As the action slows down to admire the fluid, or is that fluids, during these moments, here you can admire the handcrafted keyframes, as I'm sure no actor would agree to these motion captured sessions. As it zooms in, the lighting shifts, the focus is planted on the characters, shading passes, effects work, and all the best the team have to offer are put on show here, with a marvellous display of claret, chunks, style and motion that looks like a pre-rendered CG CGI advert for the game. The more visceral fatalities and brutalities in the game only take this a stage further, but you still cannot help getting stuck in.
Taste my blades.
Taking the Scorpion model from X to 11, the comparison is stark. Topology is significantly better now with a clever use of primitive count, as certain silhouettes can still show the lower polygon count on edges, but the core view looks supremely detailed and menacing. The materials and lighting are even more impressively enhanced over X here, as that uses a very simple blend shader for its specular map that can leave everyone either dull and flat or looking like they've just stepped out of a shower. Here they have mapped this much better with a higher resolution specular map, more accurate Fresnel calculations on the models, and a better balance of photon dispersion and bounce than prior games. The soft latex-like skin of Baraka or the fleshy tones of Scorpion's arms are a testament to how far they have taken this from the previous game. Taking the character models themselves, they are some of the most detailed, well animated and bone rigged in real time games. From facial expressions that display the horror and wince and pain of each moment to those final ones. Taking a recent high point such as Devil May Cry or even Resident Evil 2 Remake in game, they are up with the leaders on both fronts. The arenas are equally as improved with soft lighting, tons of detail, and that physically based shading just transcends the old game's backdrops, which looked so good only a few years ago on the exact same hardware and now look completely out of place. Backing this up is the use of effects and particles is much better than before. Fire now looks less as like a flat alpha and more an organic substance as you burn your enemies. Embers bounce and fade out using the GPU accelerated particle system, adding to the impact and dynamic nature of the combat. Volumetric smoke is used in backdrops to add more depth and pizzazz to the action as it billows and wraps around objects. Light volumes and volumetric fog are placed across nightclubs or misty mornings to add additional atmosphere. Screen space reflections are used on puddles and metallic objects such as spears and add to the high quality visuals. The micro facets of skin, clothes and floors all stand out as you zoom in. Get to see these even better. The shadow map system has been recreated here with far less donut munching moments cropping up and mapping to the vertex points for self-shadowing far more accurately. This really helps improve the quality and lifelike look many of these have, which includes parallax depth in eyes and specular highlights, also portrays far more realism than previous games. Another huge improvement is in the per object motion blur. It may have been improved in action from X, but it is the addition now in the fatal blow and other moments, helping mask the drop to 30 as it still looks smooth and CGI-like while keeping the blends between frames as clean as possible. The shutter speed is reduced from gameplay to match the half refresh and sample quality looks slightly better, but this alone helps improve these segments dramatically from X, not even including the improvements I've just covered above. The drop to 30 is never an issue here, as it looks remarkable and you have no control over this anyway, as you can take a rest and enjoy them while grabbing a bite to eat. It comes across as a real labour of love with the champion of the fighting series studio behind it. The risk was always low this was going to be bad, but it has exceeded all my hopes and then some with such a gigantic leap over X that this can look and feel almost like a last gen comparison, which my side by side examples here hopefully show, and this is on the high end PC version at 4K. The introduction of TAA has done wonders to aid the IQ, as has the matching work on the artistic creation of characters, materials and lighting to remove all of the instability of the FXAA that X had. The moire pattern from clothing to the pixel pops and specular shimmer are replaced with a clean, sharp and stable image that is head and shoulders above the previous entry. You could say it's a cut above the rest. Sorry. I can't wait to sink my teeth into the final game at the end of April. I will be covering in full, but from a technical performance and platform standpoint, what you see here is what you can expect come final release. A rock solid, eye-wateringly vicious and mesmerisingly beautiful game that ramps everything up to 11. No matter your platform of choice, this is going to deliver, and the promise for PC players is that that will be the best of the lot. I simply cannot wait. If you enjoyed the stuff that I put together here on the channel, then maybe think about subscribing, sharing the video, or even chatting with me over on Twitter. You can chat with me below on the video as well, but for now, I'm out and looking forward to more combat. Keep it real, keep it violent, keep it Mortal Kombat. I'll catch you on the next one.
Fatality. Scorpion wins.